Hello, my name is Steve Herberman, and I'm sitting here with a brand new signature model GLB Sound amp. They're handmade, two-piece design, made out of American Black Walnut. And these woods are just amazing. It has many features that I really like in an amp. And you'll see here that there's only three knobs here. We have volume, tone, and reverb. And this is a spring reverb. Every single amp is going to be unique. You know, this is real wood. The grain in the wood is going to be different on every single amplifier, but they're all beautiful because Gianluca pays a lot of attention to the woods that he has. Many of the boards he can't use because he only uses the best ones. Actually, in this cabinet is a 12-inch speaker, the speaker tilted back slightly in order to project the sound upwards to your ears. Because many jazz musicians don't like to tilt their amp back, especially when it's a two-piece design like this with the head and speaker cabinet. So this way, you don't need to tilt the amp back at all. The speaker is already angled upward. So let me talk a second about the head here of the GLB Sound Steve Herberman signature model. We have 4 vents on the top, and we have 2 vents on the side which act as handles. Hidden in the back is a notch filter, which I think is amazing because for me, playing tube amps up until this time has not been possible because of feedback, and I've had to cover my F-holes, sometimes both F-holes, sometimes even blowing up a balloon inside the guitar, which is ridiculous. So with this amp, not only does it sound amazing and warm, but I can get rid of feedback by using the notch filter, and nobody even knows the notch filter's here. The solid state amps, some of them sound quite good to me, the acoustic amps, in a noisy environment, but when I am in a recording studio with headphones on, or I'm in a quiet room, the amp is very sterile sounding to my ears, very hi-fi, and it lacks any kind of warmth that I've been looking for. The tubes in here add a lot of warmth to the sound. There's more of a human sound to the tubes over the solid state to me. There's not too many amps, tube amps, that have a piggyback design like this with a closed back. So the closed back speaker cabinet is very helpful to reduce feedback on its own, because with an open back, the sound disperses out the back and around the sides, which is good for musicians to hear you, but for an archtop guitar like this, it's not good for feedback problems. So as you can see on the front panel of the GIG50SH GLB Sound amp, there's only 3 knobs. There's volume, tone, and reverb. The volume knob is right now it's set about quarter of the way. So let's see how loud. These are very low output pickups, by the way. So here we have some sound here, like. It's actually pretty loud for only being a quarter of the way up. So with this particular amplifier and the other models for the archtop guitars for GLB Sound, they are 50 watts of clean headroom, which is why it's called the GIG50. And let's play around with the volume knob a little bit. We'll go here. You see how well those bass notes pop out too. Another point I wanted to mention was that for the 7-string guitar, many of these small speakers that we carry around, they might be convenient, but they're not going to really reproduce the fundamental of this 55 hertz, I think it is, the low A on my guitar. This speaker is going to reproduce that. And you're not going to hear the first harmonic, you actually hear the fundamental. And that's to me, it's a very big deal. Okay, so you can see now we're halfway. It's very loud. I probably would only need to go this loud if I was playing with a drummer. But just to give you an idea, the volume. It's pretty loud. I don't, in most cases, need to go any louder than that. I don't like playing loud, personally. But sometimes you have to fill up a big room, play in a very large space. The music should have dynamics, and so I need to turn it up to match it. Sometimes I keep the volume up, and I turn the volume down on my guitar, just in order to have some dynamic range. So as you can see, the volume right now is pretty loud. It's over halfway. You can hear what it sounds like at this volume. Okay, the next setting, next knob on the amp is a tone knob, and it acts as a high frequency roll-off. So if I go this way, the highs are at the top level, and as I go to the left, I'm rolling off highs, almost like the tone knob on my guitar. It does the same thing, except there's more of a variance with this tone knob than there is on my guitar. So usually on my guitar, I set the tone wide open, just no roll off, and I use this tone, and there's a very wide variance. What makes my signature model a little different than the others is that I like a very dark sound, and this the tonal range is what I talked about with the amp maker, and we get the perfect spectrum of sound for me. Some might prefer a brighter sound, some may even prefer a darker sound, but this is to my liking. So we first start here with the tone all the way up, highs all the way. You can hear some of the high notes. Now, that doesn't sound very bright to my ears. So the beautiful thing about this amp for me is I've always had trouble with my high end, my top two strings, usually playing the melody or when I solo. It's always too bright for my tastes, so I can't get the balance right. Now with this amp, I get the balance exactly the way I want it. And even, you can see full highs all the way up. It's still not that bright. Now if I used a pick, which I do sometimes, it would be a little bit brighter. Okay, so now I'm holding a pick in my hand, and we're going to see what the top end of the instrument sounds like with the tone control all the way up, no highs rolled off at all. And I'm going to go up to the 13th fret. So it's really not that bright, but it's in certain situations I'm going to need to set the amp with the tone all the way up like this. It depends on the room and if I'm playing with drums or not. Probably when I play with drummers, I tend to have the tone up a little bit louder. If I'm doing a duo with a bass player or a vocalist or a solo guitar, I usually have the tone set in the middle or sometimes down a little bit. Now I'm going to go about halfway with the tone, still with the pick. right, and do it finger style here. Okay, now roll the tone about 75%, rolling the highs off, okay? Rotating to the left. Nice dark sound. Solo guitar is great. The top end on the high strings on the upper frets are nice and round. If I pick up my pick, a little brighter. Similar sound, actually. Now I'm going to roll the tone all the way to the left. So all the highs now are rolled off. I'll give that a listen. Third knob on the front panel is reverb. It's very important for me to have with any amp. I am not a foot pedal guy. I don't like carrying around extra things. Actually, for me personally, a reverb pedal is something else to further degrade the sound just a little bit. Like everything that you plug between the guitar cable and the amp is just going to degrade the sound a little bit. That's why when you're in the studio, a lot of times the engineer is adding the effects, and because you want to get the pristine sound. So I like to keep it simple personally, and so I'm very glad this amp has reverb, and it's an all-tube reverb, spring reverb. Okay, so here's no reverb. Play a little bit. Okay, it's not a sound I prefer. Put a little reverb. We go about 25%, and listen to the way that sounds. Okay, so now we're going to go to about half on the reverb, which is about usually the way I set it normally. It depends. Sometimes when I play with another guitar player who uses a lot of reverb, I sometimes turn up a little bit more just to match the sound, so it's compatible. But if I was playing by myself, usually I like to keep it in about 50%. Okay. Now I'm going to take the reverb and go 75% up. That's a lot of reverb. But again, sometimes I'll need to use it. You see, when I'm punctuating the chord short like that, you really can hear the reverb. It's great. Now I'm going to go all the way up with the reverb, which I can't ever see myself doing, really, but try it anyway. Okay, so I've turned the head around so you can see the back panel. The first thing that you'll notice, there's a voltage switch on here, which means you can use it over in Europe. We switch it to the higher voltage and the lower voltage in the United States. That's very useful. Not all amps have this, and I like that feature a lot. So here we have the reverb output. There's a simple stereo cable connecting the two pieces, because the reverb is in the cabinet and not in the head to reduce the hum, the noise. So this is a perfect design for playing quiet passages or recording. It's very distracting to hear the hum, the reverb humming, and this is a problem that GLB Sound has managed to figure out, which is pretty amazing. Okay, next we have to me, the most important feature on the back here, which is a notch filter. I often have to plug my F-holes on the guitar, sometimes one, sometimes even both, in loud situations when I play with like an organ trio or something and it's like really loud. I mean, this guitar, it really has a lot of problems in that kind of a setting. Many people maybe would use some sort of notch filter, sort of an outboard pedal or something like that. Many acoustic amps have it, but not many tube amps. In fact, I can't even think of a tube amp that has a notch filter other than this one, but maybe one exists. So it's a very simple design. With the knob all the way to the right, this is going to control the bass frequencies, which often those are the ones that are feeding back. So for me, I don't usually venture to the left all the way. I'm usually somewhere around here, but it depends on the note that's feeding back. So we're going to try it right now. And I've turned up the amp pretty loud, so we're going to get some feedback. Okay. So the range that I've been able to determine with my feedback right now is an A flat, bad on the A flat, pretty bad on the G, pretty bad on the F sharp, G flat, not so much on the F. So it's really three notes, chromatic notes, semitones. So now I'm going to hold the worst note, and I'm going to attempt to cut it out. It's pretty easy. Look at that. Voila. No feedback. It's amazing. And not only that, but it doesn't affect the sound of any of the other frequencies on the guitar. So now the notch filter is off, and I'll just play a little bit, and we're going to compare the sound with the notch filter and without the notch filter. And you're going to see it's going to sound identical, except when the notch filter's off, certain notes may feed back. that's off. Now we're going to turn it on. So I'll try to remember what I played. Probably will never do that, but... So I'm up very loud now. So if you do hear a little bit of feedback, you know, first of all, I'm very close to the amplifier. I'm never this close. Stay away from the amplifier a little bit. And it's up very loud. It's up way louder than I normally would be playing. So, but you can see the notch filter has worked. It's gotten rid of the bad A flat, G, and G flat note. It's not feeding back now. Turn the notch filter off. Hello. Whoa. So, problem solved. So the notch filter test was conducted with the volume set exactly at 50% volume, just so you can compare. We're going to talk about the speaker outputs. There's two different ohms, 8 ohms and 16 ohms. The cabinet here is 16 ohm speaker, so we're plugging into the 16 ohm. It also gives you the ability, if you already have an 8 ohm cabinet, you could plug it into the 8 ohm. So there you have it. It's a very clean design. Nobody even knows you have a notch filter. It's on the back. It's very discreet, and it doesn't take away from the very clear front panel, which is very simple. And I like it. It's not cluttered. There's not a million knobs. It's sort of like the old Gibson amps. Like Jim Hall used to use the GA50, I believe. And it was the same sort of design. Very simple. Probably didn't have reverb on it. The weight of the GLB Sound amplifiers are about 22 pounds for each piece. The amp now has an optional gig bag, shoulder strap, that we put so you can have two free hands to open doors and load equipment and that sort of thing. And also a gig bag is available for the speaker cabinet as well. GLB Sound is a small company in a beautiful area of northeastern Italy. These amps are all handmade by Gianluca Laboria. And it's not an assembly line situation like a lot of other amplifier manufacturers. So you're getting something that's handmade. This is not just a dead speaker cabinet. There's a certain resonance, but it doesn't interfere with the music. It's like another half of the equation. You have the guitar. You spend a lot of money on a guitar. Like this guitar, you know, right now is between $8,000 and $10,000 probably, and you know, you don't want to be using a cheap amplifier. You care about your sound,